And I call the honourable member for Werriwa.
Tonight I speak in accord with a significant number of constituents in my electorate, most recently Katie Carolan of Rossmore and Angelina Alkabi of Austral, who seek that the Australian Renewable Energy Agency should be preserved, that the target should be retained and that the Clean Energy Council should be supported. Surprising actually that we're here debating this evening because the man who is now the Prime Minister of this country, who rushed around the country shoving factory workers into photographs with him at the behest of employers sometimes, raving about people being liars and spreading untruths, I seem to recall on the 29th of September 2011 said, look, we originated a renewable energy target. That was one of the policies of the Howard government, and yes, we remain committed to a renewable energy target. We have no plans to change the renewable energy target. We all know that this contrived investigation by Mr Warburton, an acknowledged sceptic in the area of climate change, was basically designed to soften up the electorate on behalf of corporate interests concerned at the way in which their cost structure is being undermined by the spread of solar in this country. Tonight, of course, we are dealing with an organisation which legislated for in 2011 and operative from July 2012, has put significant investment into renewable energies, into their spread and into particularly novel technological developments in that field to reduce carbon pollution. And by doing that, it has mobilised far greater finance from the private sector. And it's, as many other speakers have said, most of these developments are in rural and regional areas, for obvious reasons, the availability of alternative energy sources there, the lack of effect upon householders, etc. And it's got to be stressed that we see a significant number of National Party members not speaking in this debate, possibly because of that proportion of development that has occurred from this particular measure in rural and regional areas. And we've heard figures that, of course, one of the outcomes has been 1.2 million households with solar. I'll summarise later some of those developments, but perhaps when he wrote on the 21st of February this year, Nicholas Stern, the chair of the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and the Environment at the Leiden School of Economics, and President of the British Academy, and acknowledged for serious work in this field previously. Perhaps he had in mind this particular government when he said, unfortunately, the current pace of progress is not nearly rapid enough, with many rich industrialised countries being slow to make the transition to cleaner and more efficient forms of economic growth. The lack of vision and political will from the leaders of many developed countries is not just harming their long-term competitiveness, but is also endangering efforts to create international cooperation and reach an agreement. Delay is dangerous. Inaction could be justified only if we could have great confidence that the risks posed by climate change are small. But that is not what 200 years of climate science is telling us. The risks are huge. That's the reality that is being articulated by a significant thinker in this field. Of course, he also noted that the IPCC had concluded at that point from all of the available scientific evidence that it is 95% likely that most of the rise in global average temperature since the middle of the 20th century is due to the emission of greenhouse gases, deforestation and other human activities. That is a reality which is denied by many opposite. They've been told to kind of go through the motions, pretend we believe in climate change. There's a lot of people out there who are actually listening to these international bodies and people that have picked up that they themselves are not scientists. And perhaps these people that are saying it around the world after major studies, perhaps they're not self-interested, perhaps they actually do know something in this field, and we better pretend that we actually do recognise climate change. But we all know from the occasional outbursts, the occasional indiscretion, that many in the government opposite are not too supportive of that reality. I note that as this government undertakes this very unfortunate initiative to basically undermine renewables, undermine alternative sources of energy, undermine the international effort against climate change, that the IEA, the International Energy Agency, has made some comments about the international trend at this moment. Now, they're not an affiliate of the Australian Council of Trade Unions. They're not associated with the British Labor Party or the German Social Democrats. They're a respected international agency that actually specialise in this field. Their comments about what is happening around the world and what should be happening here are very opposite. Wind, solar and other renewable energy capacity grew at its strongest ever pace last year and now produces 22% of the world's electricity, the IEA said on Thursday in a new report. Maria van der Hoeven, the Executive Director of the IEA, said governments should hold their nerve. Renewables are a necessary part of energy security. However, just when they are becoming a cost-competitive option in an increasing number of cases, policy and regulatory uncertainty is rising in some key markets. And by Christ, I think Australia might be in that category that she was alluding to. This stems from concerns about the cost of deploying renewables. She went on to note that hydro and other green technologies could be producing 26% of the world's electricity by 2020. So look, we've got a credible international source actually saying that there is a lack of nerve at the moment. There are those governments around that driven by corporate interest, driven by a lack of knowledge, driven by a lack of courage, an inability to face up to crisis, to understand that if we don't do something, the situation is going to be exacerbated. She certainly, and that organisation might have been referring to Australia. And as I said earlier, there's been a heavy concentration of developments in this sector that are in rural and regional areas. Alinta Energy at Port Augusta, a solar thermal feasibility study for a standalone solar thermal plant. We've got a situation at Dumadji, the solar farm there in the Gulf of Carpentaria, a solar PV diesel hybrid allowing diesel generators to be turned off, result in 1.26 MWP of solar photovoltaic generation. And that, of course, is typical of what's occurring in this field. Also, funding credible academic authorities such as Swinburne University for wave energy farm research. Mr Ivel Frischknecht, the CEO of ARENA, the group that's going to be abolished by this government, commented of the world's first redeployable large-scale solar diesel hybrid in regional Queensland, quote, a viable renewable energy alternative and could equally be used to assist in international relief efforts. So, I guess that's another area not too interesting to this government that has slashed foreign aid, but that particular initiative in trying to counter the threat of climate change could actually be utilised because of its ability to move foreign aid efforts. I say that what we're seeing here now is a total repudiation of commitments that were given to the Australian people, that this government would not undermine ARENA, that it actually believed in it, that it somehow associated itself with some of these changes. And as someone said earlier, the Minister in introducing this bill is at pains to basically tell us of the wide benefits that have occurred from this organisation. He very much was positive about outcomes, and then I say the actual bill itself, if you didn't know better, is actually designed to destroy it. There is responsibility in this country to take a lead rather than to be a retrograde non-player in international agreements and inaction in the country. In 2010, of course, Climate Analysis Indicators tool from Washington DC, the World Resources Institute, in 2010 made a point, and it's been made with slight variations every other year before and after since this became an international issue. It noted that per capita emissions in Australia at that point were 27.4, UAE 38.2, USA 23.5, Canada 22.9. All four of them amongst the, interestingly enough, amongst the people at the back of the field when you look at their lack of activity. So there is responsibility in this country to, rather than undermine the move towards alternatives, to actually be in the lead. Because as noted by Kofi Annan's Global Humanitarian Forum, the interesting thing is that nearly 98% of the people seriously affected by climate change, 99% of all deaths from weather-related disasters, and 90% of the total economic losses will be borne by developing countries. The populations most at risk are in sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, South Asia and the small countries of the Pacific. So whilst we sit on our hands, whilst we in actual fact undermine the needs to act, the people most unable to cope with this are in those underdeveloped countries. An article by John Vidal in the Guardian Weekly noted that 310 million people will suffer adverse health consequences, 220 million more people will fall into poverty, and 75 million extra people will be displaced by climate change in the estimates of Kofi Annan's foundation. So I want to, as I say in conclusion, very firmly oppose this measure. It is not an issue on which the government has a mandate. Clearly they tried to delude the Australian public that it would be business as usual in this particular sector. It's a situation where an organisation has been successful. It has engendered action. It has engendered finance from the private sector. It has accomplished very worthwhile renewable activity.